The specs of the PlayStation VR2 are definitely something to awe at, especially considering its price. You get a high-resolution OLED screen, decent bundled controllers, and if you're a console gamer, you can already play some of the games that you own. However, there's one thing that us VR users can't find on a spec sheet, and it's something that Linus didn't consider in his video about the latest and greatest headset. In the VR space, there have really only been two market segments. The one that we are all familiar with, PC VR, like the Vive, Rift, and Index, and standalone, things like the Quest 2 and the Pico 4. But there was once a middle ground that was very promising, yet never achieved the same level of success. That was/is console VR, and you'll see why I say that in a second. Truly the only headset that belongs to the console VR segment is PlayStation VR 1, now PSVR 2, and if you're stretching, we can include the Virtual Boy, which, if you know the story of, you know where this is going. Sony released the original PlayStation VR headset in 2016, and it was pretty good for the price. It was my first introduction to virtual reality, and it did a good enough job that I wanted to get into VR further. Unfortunately, the original PlayStation VR headset suffered in the spec department. A low-resolution screen, poor tracking, and terrible repurposed controllers sabotaged the headset's success. But there's something much more important to VR users that PlayStation simply can't give them. To explain this, I'm going to have to talk about first-party versus third-party software. I'll make this quick and simple, I promise. When a hardware company makes a product, they often include first-party software. For a Quest 2, this could simply be the operating system, and on the PC VR side, this could be Steam VR for the Valve Index. The real issue with PlayStation VR 1 and 2 is third-party software support. On PC VR, you can use third-party software natively. It's basically built into the platform itself, and even on the Quest 2, you can sideload third-party software directly into the headset. There are no hoops to jump through to get an experience personalized to you. Now, third-party is incredibly useful for VR users. It's used to make your VR experience simply better. Almost every PC VR user I've met in VR chat has something like a VR Toolkit, a program that allows you to move your play space, reset your tracking, and a bunch of other nice features, like being able to look at the battery life of your controllers and trackers, browse your desktop on multiple monitors, and even control your music. Back to PlayStation VR, Sony has no real reason to let you use third-party software. I wasn't the only one not entirely hooked by the original PlayStation VR due to these limitations, as only 5 million have sold. Now don't get me wrong, that is a very healthy number, but compared to Meta's line of headsets rumored to have sold around 20 million units total, a massive majority likely coming just from the Quest 2, you can see this. Like many, I ended up moving on to PC VR, using an original Vive that I bought for $50, and found the amazing and sometimes outright creepy world of VR chat, a place that I could call a second home. The lighthouse-based tracking on the Vive and superior but still awful Vive wands gave me a much better experience than the PlayStation VR did. I've since upgraded and now I'm playing on a Vive Pro 2 using Valve Index controllers, arguably the best VR controllers on the market. They're kind of fragile though, with 3.0 full body tracking powered by a big boy RTX card. Would going to PSVR 2 be a downgrade? Let's talk about that. Console VR as a market segment has existed in this strange gray area where it isn't quite as affordable and mass adopted as standalone, but not quite as powerful and open as PC VR is. To make this short and to the point, hardware in VR isn't an issue. VR hardware has only gotten better throughout the years, especially with all of the new stuff that we got less than a year ago. The truth is that people who love VR already have the hardware that they want, and there's already hardware on the market that covers their needs. The real problem is that VR is lacking in the software department, and that is only half the truth. VR has some truly amazing games and experiences that have accumulated over the past decade of development. But truly, I don't think the issue is PC VR versus PSVR. I think the issue lies in the VR user base itself. I've spent quite some time in VR chat over the years and spoken to hundreds of people who are genuine daily users of VR, and I think I have some ideas about who buys and actually uses their VR headsets. There's an extremely common route that I notice to becoming a daily VR user. You buy a Quest 2, play some games, and end up trying VR chat and get sucked into the endless wormhole of community-driven experiences that the game has to offer. It really is a software that you can always hop into in VR and really never be bored. The reason why I say the issue with VR is us is because I see most people only playing 2 games. After around a month of owning a Quest 2 or any other headset, you probably exclusively play VR chat or Beat Saber, and then you find out that you can play Beat Saber in VR chat. The main consumer base in VR is already locked into PC or Meta hardware and software, and I really don't see the benefit in having yet another lockdown ecosystem to drag consumers into. So, do I think moving from PC VR to PlayStation VR would be a downgrade? I really wish I could say different, but your best option as a new VR user today is definitely to buy a Quest 2 or a Pico 4. The options that it affords you are way too much to pass up simply for an OLED screen. A Quest 2 with a link cable and a decent PC to run it will be more than enough to give you 99% of what VR has to offer with no restrictions. Now, I'm not the guy that makes fun of somebody for what VR they are playing on, but as someone who's passionate about the technology and truly wants people to have a great experience with it, I honestly can't recommend PlayStation VR over PC VR or even just standalone. Maybe there's something that I'm missing or that I don't see. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts. I'll be replying to as many of you as I can.